Thank you for tuning in to the Clay Edwards Show here, wherever you may be watching this video. Real quick, it's brought to you by the free testosterone screenings at Men's Health of Mississippi. Ladies, don't let the name fool you. You are welcome to take advantage of the free testosterone screenings as well. All you got to do is text my name, all caps, Clay, to 601-327-8550. Just a few of the symptoms that could be brought on by low testosterone include, but are not limited to, fatigue, decreased muscle tone, lack of energy, low libido, that's your sex drive, brain fog, and even sleep disturbances. It helped my mental health and depression a lot too, believe it or not. Again, text my name, 601-327-8550. Text Clay to 601-327-8550, and they're going to get you hooked up out there at their Madison office. That's Men's Health of Mississippi. As we wind down here, 5 minutes or so or less, I want to circle back to the one topic I really wanted to hit with you was at the beginning I mentioned that it feels like there's a bit of a civil war within the Conservative Party. You have what's considered the establishment side versus, say, Maga.
Yep.
How do you think we got to this point where this blue collar Maga, whatever you want to consider that being, versus kind of this establishment side where it feels, or the grassroots versus the establishment, whatever phrase you want to use to describe it. How do you think we got to that point, and what do you think we need to do to get over that? I think we got to win in 24 and to say, hey, we were right or we were wrong, one or the other. But that's kind of my opinion. It's all going to hinge on what happens in November. And I think we got a great guy, Mike Hirsch, leading the Mississippi GOP. I went to the executive board meeting a few weeks ago and just loved everything I heard and his leadership. So I think we're going in the right direction. But, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something I thought about a lot. So to answer that, Clay, I'll go back to 2014, the Senate race, Chris McDaniel versus Thad Cochran. And I supported Chris McDaniel in 2014. Chris knows that, wrote an article in support of him that got published, contributed a little money, attended events and so forth. And it wasn't that I was unhappy at Thad Cochran. I just felt like it was time for a change. I mean, I felt like we just needed to rotate the crops, honestly. And no particular axe to grind or grievance with him. But I took a lot of heat from, a lot of folks that you would consider, I guess, so-called establishment. I really don't even like the term, to be honest with you.
I'm not a fan of either term, but there's a clear divide.
Yeah.
You got to pick a title.
That's right. So, and I said, well, the rule in sales, don't you? First rule of sales. I said, what's that? I said, you got to ask for the order. You guys never asked me. Yeah. Nobody ever asked me. They did. You never asked. You just assumed. And that's my point. I think that's how we got to where we were. I think people felt like they didn't have a voice, that like they were shut out, that there was an inner circle. They were on the outside of that. They did not have the keys to the candy store, as they were said, and they were just felt like that their voice needed to be heard. And I do think that the party got to a point, and many people that were kind of just legacy. It doesn't mean they're bad people. I'm not saying that, but I think they dismissed them. And they ignored them a little bit because they could, took them for granted.
That's how I felt.
I totally agree. So I believe that the Republican Party is as culpable, if you want to call it that, culpable, or how about responsible, for the emergence of Donald Trump as the Democrats were. It's the same deal.
Sure.
We kind of have this habit in the party of next person in line.
Second Trump came down that escalator, Gerard, and spoke, and I was like, he talked to me. He just talked to Clay Edwards directly. And I was going into it thinking Jeb Bush maybe, and
everybody did,
or whoever. And I mean, the second Trump got done, I knew immediately. I changed my banner on my Facebook page and everything to Trump. It was instantaneous. I was like, it's not my fault that I connected with the New York billionaire.
He was a disruptor.
It's y'all's fault that he's more relatable than y'all.
So the typical candidates, and it was Jeb Bush was considered, right, the heir apparent. You remember all that, the little JEB stickers all over the place, and he had $100 million like right off the bat and all that sort of stuff. I mean, he was Republican dynasty, and it wasn't that Jeb was a bad guy. It's just that he wasn't connecting, as you said, to a Clay Edwards, for example. He didn't resonate, and Donald Trump did. And I just feel like that they had survived and honestly flourished for so long with that attitude where they could ignore so many people that felt like they were getting shut out. And finally, I think the worm turned and they said, we got somebody here that does pay attention to us, that does value us. And I do really believe that's what led to the creation, like it or not, of Donald Trump. And that's where we are today. Look at the look at the distinction between the typical Democrat supporter and the typical Republican supporter. We've kind of almost swapped roles, over the last 20 years or so.
We have, and the left is dealing with this too. There's going to be a reckoning in both parties at some point. The left has their progressive side versus their traditional liberal side, and I get along very well with the traditional liberal side. You can have a conversation with them.
Absolutely.
Can't have a conversation with the progressive, but they're definitely becoming the minority, the traditional liberals.
Yep.
And you have this going on our side. It's been very interesting to watch, and it's going to be fun to watch over the next year and see what happens, because I think it's definitely evolved, and I think they respect us a little more now. They're not gonna take us for granted.
But we do need some unity. And I think Mike Hurst, as you said, I think he's a good guy to help kind of patch things up in the state. We have a tendency, whether you're in whichever faction within our party, of not practicing our best listening skills. We got to listen more, and I think we just immediately dismiss people who don't think like us without listening to them and understanding their point of view and how they got there. And if you hope to persuade them to your point of view, you got to be respectful, and you got to let them talk. And I think we need more civil discourse, including within our party. And this constant, well, that person's a rhino coming from maybe the writer extreme in our party, and then the people that are being called the rhinos just call everybody over there wacko conspiracy theorists. Somewhere in the middle, far right extremists. Somewhere in the middle, I feel like is where we got to land here, and I think it's possible to do that. And I think we need a person who can interface with both sides and maybe try to serve as a conduit and a liaison to bring them together, because we're way stronger when we're together. When we're fighting each other, the Democrats love it, and I hate that.
Yeah, well, I feel like this conversation helps that, because I think a lot of people on my side feel like Super Talk is kind of the voice of the traditional GOP, or the establishment or whatever, and kind of like we're over here and we're kind of the little grassroots engine that could. And I feel like us having a conversation and putting all this out there and understanding that, man, we're way closer to the same than we are.
There's no doubt about it.
Are apart, and we really need to work together. I got on some other local media people on Twitter the other day, and others. I don't want to pinpoint anybody. I've been as guilty as anybody of attacking people on our side. But I was like, hey, let's call a truce till after the election. It looks bad seeing us fight each other. We need to be on the same team. We need to get back in the same foxhole, and we can revisit this fight in January.
I totally agree.
Or whenever.
And I want to point this out too, and you're right. I hear that a lot as well about folks that kind of have this perception of what Super Talk is. I want folks to know that management has never said a word to me about what to say or not to say. And when that starts happening, I'm done. I don't need to do this. I do it because I enjoy it, and I hope that maybe my voice can help a little bit in some small way in the state. And also, if folks listen to me enough, I criticize members of our legislature, our congressional delegation. I don't give them passes. Now, a lot of times, this, like people want, when they come in the studio, me to just go in attack mode on them. I'm not going to do that. They're just not. They're never coming back if you do that. And if they don't come back, we don't get information.
I've never done it. I'm not going to do it. It's not how I want to be treated.
No.
And that's not how I'm going to treat my guests.
You got to be respectful.
I want to have conversations. I got a co-host 2 days a week that's a traditional liberal, voted for Obama twice, really don't know who he's voting for right now. And we have great conversations. Sean Cochran twice a week, sometimes more often. And it is, at first, my listeners are like, oh, I'll never listen again if you have that guy on that says things I disagree with. And now I get more compliments, and I can look at the podcast and the streams.
Good.
It's the biggest shows of the week.
Good.
Which I don't know if that says more about the shows I do by myself or whatnot, but it gives the other side, let them know, hey, we're listening, man.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Well, nobody's telling me to toe any party line or anything like that. When I disagree, I'll let them know, but I'm not going to sit there and just be belligerent about it. I just let them know. And a lot of times I'll handle that like, well, have you thought about this and how that might affect, then just to kind of trigger their mind, their thoughts a little bit. But you know, I've been like Senator Wicker, who I get along with well. I've said many times he cast 3 votes that I strongly disagree with, that I think were just bad, and I wish he wouldn't have.
I thought your strongest work that I've heard personally was Joey Hood after the Safer Act. I thought just round of applause. I called Fred. I was like, that was phenomenal. I think he sent you my message, and I just absolutely loved that because you took him to task, and politely, respectfully, took him to task on it, and I was like, that's what we need. I loved that, and I took him to task the way I do it, a little more bull in a china shop. But you know, we got the dang thing passed, and it should have never got to what it did. And that was a great situation where a lot of us came together for the greater good. And look what happens when we come together.
Yeah, I totally agree.
You know, Gerard Gibert, thank you so much for coming on. I had a million other things I wanted to hit, but train gets a little further down the track, we'll circle back and do this again. Y'all be sure to listen to Gerard every day, 10 to 1, 97.3 here locally, supertalk.fm.
Yep.
Statewide, you know, or you can always find the Supertalk stations. They're pretty easy to find, or supertalk.fm. They got an app, everything. Download it, and be sure to check out my radio show, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday, 103.9 FM, WYAB. And, of course, check out the podcast. Just search Clay Edwards Show. Or if you're looking for me on YouTube, it's at SaveJXN across all social media. Real quick, I want to give a shout-out to the producer here today, Daniel Anderson at Audio Alchemy Studios. If you're interested in doing a video podcast, or you don't want to cut the cameras on, maybe you just want to do an audio, don't want to buy the equipment, don't know what to do, reach out to Daniel at 601-672-6591 and consider starting a podcast. It's really fun, and you never know, one day you'll end up with a successful guy like Gerard sitting across from you, man. It's good stuff. Gerard, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Clay. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.